This is a good time for us to plug our sponsor because we have a Crackin Backs coffee, and it's actually made by our friend Tim.
Welcome to another episode of the Crackin Backs podcast. Today we sit down with the amazing Dr. Paul Varnas. Why do so many of us, despite our best intentions, falter when it comes to proper nutrition? Dr. Paul, with a career rooted deeply in this topic, sheds light on this and more. Dive into the world of food sensitivities, unravel the mysteries of vitamin supplements, and discover if you're actually guzzling too much coffee. Ever wonder why the Western diet may be the culprit behind rising inflammation, or how the paleo fares against the keto diet? Well, today's your lucky day. From revealing intriguing tales of Ignaz Semmelweis to addressing the burning issue of COVID and post-COVID syndrome, this episode promises a wealth of knowledge. Buckle up, listeners. This is a journey through health and history you won't want to miss.
All right, nutrition. That's what we're here to talk about today, which is such a hot topic, but it's also such a broad topic. And everyone can benefit from the knowledge that we have in our show today with Dr. Paul. So you have spent a good amount of your career on this subject. And why do you feel most people struggle with something that is so infinitely should be simple, which is proper nutrition?
Well, one thing, I just finished reading a book by Michael, what's his name? I want to say Moore, but I could be wrong. His New York Times writer wrote a book about how people like McDonald's and Frito-Lay and junk food people actually use neuroscientists to make stuff addictive. They they hook people up to PET scans and they'll try different versions of their product and see which lights up the pleasure centers best and do that. And then we train people to eat that from grade school. You ever been to a school cafeteria? They specialize in junk food, and we become addicted. And as we become addicted, it changes our microbiome because garbage in, garbage out. Like basically what you don't digest, your bacteria grow on. So that's why you can say, oh, I'm going to eat less, but you eat the same way. You don't lose any weight. The microbiome, thin people have a different microbiome than fat people. So we all develop fat people microbiomes, and then we're addicted to the stuff, and and it's like, okay, I'm not going to have a donut for breakfast. I'm going to have a bagel. I'm going to do better. So we eat a lot of, about 50% of our diet is refined carbohydrates, and we get 200 pounds of sugar a year, 10 pounds of chemical additives, and there we are, and we got a $4 trillion healthcare bill, and no one's addressing this. And like I say, go to a school. In fact, if you look at, if you get a chance, Paul Stitt and his wife, I can't remember his wife's name, they used to own Natural Ovens and Manitowoc Bread Company. And they set up a program in Appleton, Wisconsin, where they took over all the sugar drinks went away, and they fed the kids breakfast and lunch, and they did this in a high school that was for the problem children, and by changing the food, they stopped having violent incidents, and grades went up, test scores went up, and all that. And that's on video. It's on YouTube. I actually put it. I put a link to it on my website. Like with a little article. One of my websites, wholehealthweb.com. You can find it there. Or if you just go to YouTube and search Appleton Schools, there's 2 videos, and you'll see the difference. So we're stuck here, and the Obama tried to change. Michelle Obama talked about eating healthy and all that kind of thing, but the food industry lobby is way too powerful, and they backed off of that right away. And the crap they're feeding the kids is courtesy of the government, so there we are,
Dr.
and
Varnas, oh, sorry, go ahead. I had a quick question that I wanted to ask you in regards to microbiome. A lot of our audience may not know what microbiome is, and that's a big
okay,
word these days.
yeah, you have between 3 and 7 pounds of bacteria in your intestines. Okay, it's an ecosystem. It's supposed to be there. Many people may have heard of candidiasis. You eat a lot of sugar, you take a lot of antibiotics, and you get a lot of yeast in there, and people get sick from that. Well, bacteria, if you got good bacteria, they make vitamins, they heal the GI lining, they keep pathogens in check, that kind of thing. And if you get the wrong kind of bacteria, they produce toxins. A lot of weird hormonal problems can come from it because they deconjugate stuff that the liver's trying to get rid of, and produce ammonia. It's strongly linked to depression. Like all this stuff on antidepressants and all that research is fudged. The whole serotonin reuptake inhibitor is all bullshit. Uh, and they're finding out that depression is more about inflammation and what's going on in your gut, and that ecosystem is very important to a lot of different things. Autoimmune diseases are increasing by 7% a year, and largely due to what's going on in the gut. Also, what we get in the environment. There's genetic predisposition. There's all these other kinds of things. But you look at figures for autism and ADHD. All these chronic diseases are going up because of what we're doing to the environment and what we're putting in our stomachs. I always think of Ignaz Semmelweis. You know who he is. Semmelweis came up with the idea that, gee, if the surgeons washed their hands between patients, not so many of them would die, and basically got hounded out of the profession. He lost his job. He was mocked. He was, all of that. That was in the mid 19th century, and the equivalent of that today is there's no such thing as subclinical vitamin deficiency. Chiropractic doesn't, it might be good for a backache, but they really need to get their act together and prove that, the environment has nothing to do with your health, and, oh, you can eat whatever you want, food additives don't matter. Uh, so, we're, the same sort of people that existed in Semmelweis' time are with us. They just got different things to suppress now. So,
Right on.
you know,
Right.
so and it's interesting because medicine presents itself as scientific. You got the white coat and it's all and even in school, and chiropractors buy into it too. That all these are the real scientists. But if it's because, oh, we haven't done the research. Well, really, there's a lot of little research out there, and let's go back to grade school when you learned what scientific method was, and that is you make an observation. Okay, and once you make an observation, you follow along with it, and then you test it, and then see if it's true. So what happens is you say, oh, gee, I think if I gave my asthma patients magnesium, their symptoms seem to go down. And you got another guy, got a bunch of practitioners doing that, and the medical authorities, the scientists will say, well, no, that's not proven. That's not it. Well, they've dismissed it out of hand. They've taken your hypothesis and just shut it down without even testing it. So it's not really science. I mean, medical science is to science what cherry Kool-Aid is to cherries. It's real scientists like to look at medical journals and laugh. You look at and they fudge their results. Uh, the opioid thing. They fudge their results, and the journals pass it along because not only do they sell advertising, but the pharmaceutical industry. Well, if you publish this study, we'll buy 1 million reprints, and our people will hand them out. So they get a big chunk of cash that way. So they're controlling all the information there. Then their people are in the NIH and the CDC, and so we've got this this false view of what health is, and
Yeah.
and then if you say anything otherwise, it's a nut. Look at COVID. My God, did you ever hear anyone talk about IV vitamin C? There was a study that showed that vitamin D, if you had a vitamin D level above 60, you would not get you would not end up in the hospital. So are we testing vitamin D levels? Well, no, you can't patent vitamin D. Uh, you know, it's all about getting patents. We don't look for the best solution for health. We look for the best patentable solution.
So
So our healthcare is all screwed up.
what do you think
And then we
about?
got the food industry on the other side keeping us, and we're getting say we're at $4 trillion. Okay, it's $11,000 for every man, woman, and child. And you could go, okay, I want government health care. Okay, well then you're going to be taxed $11,000 per person, or if a private sector, you're going to shell out $11,000 because we're doing shit that don't work. you know?
What do you think about now? There's a lot of medical doctors that are doing nutritional counseling. They're doing the lab work and so on, and they're
Well,
promoting
there's more of
vitamins.
that, and it's good. The problem is, you know, it is about the science. Like I do stuff in my own office, and I can find studies that support it, or I can find other people that support it. But there's no research apparatus. Like what's the best thing for leaky gut? What's you, you know I'll talk to one. I'll go to a seminar, and one guy will have one thing, and he'll swear by it, and it's probably working. Somebody else is telling you something else, and so you don't have like a concerted effort looking at these things because, well, we'll look at it. So, that's very interesting. We'll look into it someday. You know, you know, and what's nice is because of how the internet and PubMed and all that kind of stuff. We're getting a little more homogenized in what we're doing. There's more information, and the medical doctors, they're not the enemy. 50% of all medical doctors are working for some kind of corporate entity.
Now,
Okay, and a lot of them are, you're not getting medical decisions from a doctor. You're getting it from an actuary in a company somewhere.
yeah.
My father-in-law had bradycardia, but it wasn't low enough to where they could give him a pacemaker. So the doctor who wanted to give him a pacemaker couldn't, get it covered or whatever, and he eventually ended up with dementia. You know, because people healthcare isn't being run by healthcare people. I mean, look at the mess of COVID. My God, you get 57 vaccines, and well, you'll get it, but you won't get it so bad. While we ignored everything else, and then Dr. Brownstein ran a little thing where he got 150 COVID patients out of 150 patients better. He set up a protocol that worked pretty well, put it on his website, and the FTC told him to shut it down because he couldn't make claims. And he finally got permission to put it up there because he printed it as a study and said, according to my study, this is what happened.
Wow,
And
that's
but yeah,
great.
Brownstein stuff is interesting. He's got some good stuff. And I looked at his COVID program. It's different from mine, but if you look at, I think the guy that best described how natural healthcare works was Emmanuel Shiraskin, and he presented it as a concentric circle. And I wish I had visual for it, but if you could picture, the center of the circle is, diet, biorhythmic integrity, your genetics, environmental time, that kind of thing. And if that gets messed up, the next level is your enzyme systems, and it's all of a sudden enzymes don't work so good. Okay, and then further out, hormonal systems start to go wrong, and then you get general biochemical problems, and further out you get physiological performance. If someone's there, that's the person who goes from doctor to doctor and says, gee, something's not right. They ran tests, no one found nothing wrong with me, and that kind of thing. Well, because the whole center of his circle's rotten out, but he hasn't exhibited signs and symptoms. When he gets signs and symptoms, then there's a problem. I've got that on Whole Health. I've got that on drvarnas.com somewhere
We
too.
will post that. I saw the images in one of your brochure pamphlets, and I'll have our engineer post the sequence that you were.
Yeah, take anything, try
sharing.
anything on my website, put it up. I don't care. I'm trying to my whole thing is I want chiropractors and medical doctors to start doing this kind of work, and whenever I go to a seminar, I'm very upset because it makes it like I pretend, okay, if I don't know nothing, what am I going to get out of this seminar? And the seminar is usually, um, the guy's got his worst case that he ever saw in his life, and if you're sitting there and you don't know nothing, you say, oh, God, I'll never do that. And then a lot of them are like food knives. They'll tell you like, oh, even if you eat organic, you're getting glyphosate. There's still DDT in our food. They'll tell you the woes of what's wrong with our environment, and they're right. But it's sort of like you get, it's like the experiment with the dog where they kept shocking it and he couldn't do anything to turn the shock off and just laid there and took it, and so when you hear how bad our environment and how bad our diet is, you go, oh, screw it, I ain't going to do that, and I go to a supermarket and I'll see a chubby woman and her chubby kid, and they got Count Chocula and Diet Pop and chips and shit in there, and that kind of thing. And I go, well, they ain't dead, so maybe there's hope for us. And a lot of the stuff I wrote is sort of like, let's not get into the controversy of ketogenic or low fat versus low carb. Let's just get the obvious junk out of our diet. And I wrote a book called Everything You Want to Know About Energy, but We're Too Tired to Ask. And and that was basically it. And I got Ruth Winter's information, like she's got a book on food additives and what they're doing and the things that are allowed, and now we got GMOs, and that's a whole nother mess. And I finally took all the information and I consolidated it, and you can make this available to your people. I put in a book called Roadmap to Health. It's a little tiny booklet. It's got recipes and handouts and things like that. And it's free to anybody. It's got some Zorex information in there because I write newsletters for Zorex, and their heart's in the right place, and I try to help them out whenever I can. But anyway, it's not a perfect diet, everyone says, because you hear the plant paradox, and I don't address that. What I've done with that is it's basically an alkaline. Remember alkaline ash diet?
I love it.
I mean, the thing is, it works. You go to Optimum Health Institute, and people, you see tumors shrink and all that kind of stuff. And alkaline is basically what, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. So 50-60%. That's your food. We allow meat. I don't get into vegan. Vegan can be very healthy. They're the sickest people you've ever seen in your life. Well, yeah, because they fill up on starch, and then I added Elaine Gottschall's discipline. I can't remember the doctor's name. Sidney Haas came up with a diet for kids with Crohn's disease, and it works about 33% of the time. Colitis, Crohn's disease, and I found any kind of irritable bowel, whatever. Most of these patients get better, and basically you avoid complex carbohydrates. And the reason you avoid Elaine Gottschall's argument in her book, it's called it used to be Food and the Gut Reaction. Now it's called Ending the Vicious Cycle. And her argument is that we eat too many complex carbohydrates. Like fruit sugar is carbohydrate, but it's simple. It's a simple sugar. I mean, if fructose, fruit sugar is a train car, then complex carbohydrates the whole train. And it's got to be split up into individual carbs, and we get inefficient at doing that, and so the bacteria take over. The stuff starts to rot in your intestines, gets into the small intestine where you're supposed to be getting more enzyme help, and you start losing those enzymes, and it kind of spirals out of control, and you got Crohn's disease. If it happens further down the line, you've got ulcerative colitis, and and I would argue irritable bowel syndrome, and all that stuff. So I took that piece of information, and it's not a forever thing. Elaine Gottschall herself would say, you do it for 2 or 3 years, you can go back to eating complex carbohydrates. You want to give the gut a break, and then you can take what you know about nutrition well, if my pancreas isn't breaking down enzymes, why don't I take pancreatic enzymes while I'm doing this diet, to kind of help things along? And then there's product, colostrum and whatnot that help heal the gut, and you can do antioxidants. And then now you got a Crohn's disease program out of it. But I start with this roadmap to health diet. And like I say, it's not perfect. There's people that can't handle nightshades. There's people that can't handle eggs, but I got sick of telling people the same thing every day. So I printed it, I got it. It's a PDF. Anybody can have it and use it and, see how it is. And I tell people to do it for 30 days because nutritional counseling is a negotiation. People, they're addicted, and they don't want to give up their favorite things, but they can do anything for 30 days. And what I found is that in 30 days they get the connection between what they're doing and how they're feeling. And I've had, I got stories from that. I had one guy who's coming down from, I'm in Illinois. I was in Chicago at the time. With Crohn's disease, and I gave him the diet, and I never saw him. And he called and thanked me and said he went into remission and stayed there. I had a friend of mine, 2 sinus infections a year for 20 years. I put him on the diet. They stopped. you know, uh, it gets high in antioxidants, high in the alkaline ash diet. Like, if you Google alkaline ash diet, you find every slug nutty in the world weighs in on the alkaline ash diet. But you think about it. It's high in polyphenols. Now you start looking at the research on polyphenols, bioflavonoids and stuff like that. Resveratrol is a polyphenol, these kind of things. Well, that's what the diet's high in,
Mm.
anti-cancer and, anti-allergy and, like you name it, and you're fixing that. So anyway, I usually a lot of times I'll start people on that diet for 30 days and then see where I end up. A lot of times I don't even have to give them supplements. It's anti-inflammatory. I know you had Siemens there talking about the anti-inflammatory diet. Foods create inflammation or they get rid of inflammation. And I tried to do it in a way where people could eat normally. Because once again, a lot of people in my world are food Nazis, and oh, you can't have that, and oh, you know, you know, I mean, like you're stuck, like you're on a strip somewhere. You go to McDonald's, have a salad. Okay, yeah, it's not the best salad in the world, but the hell,
Right.
what are you gonna do? You got to eat something, and if you get too, oh, this is bad, that's bad. You end up like that dog laying on the grid, getting shocked all the time. You don't do nothing, and also, you come to the realization all your patients are going to die, and and healthcare is the goal of healthcare is to die young as late in life and as possible. So
It's a good way to put it. Yeah.
you know, and so someone who it just pains them to give up certain things, but they're not that sick.
Mhm.
What we're gonna do. So you always end up coming to uh, like an agreement. I had a guy. He came to me. We had 900 triglycerides. 900 triglycerides, you know. And this is actually talk about scientific medicine. They had him on a statin to bring
Oh
down his
no.
triglycerides. And he didn't like the statin. I told him to throw it away. And then I told him the diet, which is basically insulin insensitivity. You don't eat it. Well, it's the diet I've got. Or you can look up glycemic load, not eat anything over glycemic load of 10. And I gave him a bunch of lipoic acid and niacin, and all that. And he said to me, he was a political guy in Springfield. He said the food's really bad there, and he says plus he's always going out, and he says I live in the land of doughy white men, and and he says I'm not sure I'll be able to do much on the diet. So he says, but I'll take as many pills as you give me. I took him at his word. And in a couple of months, we had cut it in half, and without him paying much attention to the diet. And so you can do it with supplements. And I usually have, when I have that diet discussion with people, um, I tell them, I'll sell you more supplements, but it's fewer visits, fewer supplements if you follow the diet. When I was teaching nutrition, I had somebody who was like a raw food proponent, alkaline, that kind of thing, and she said, "Well, you shouldn't have to take vitamins ever," you know, and uh,
Well, actually,
and
that
and in a
that
way, she's right.
that leads. That is one of my one of the questions that I really wanted to ask you that is, when you're taking tons of vitamins, vitamin supplements, and how do you really know what's working? And how would you do lab tests, or you just
Well, you
base
could
it
do
on
lab. You could
feeling?
do. I was a big fan when I first got in practice. Standard Process had a thing called the uh, health questions. They had a health questionnaire, a symptom survey form.
Yes, I
And I thought it
remember
was the
that.
coolest
Yeah,
thing in the world.
yeah, yeah.
And I feel unfortunately everybody needs AF beta food and Drenamine according to that
Yeah.
thing. And I always became interested in it and started collecting questions. And I actually created I've got symptomquiz.com where I put the questionnaire, but if you go to drvarnas.com, I have a newer version that you can do on your phone. The old version's on symptomquiz.com, and you could put it asks you a bunch of questions. For instance, you get tired after eating, okay? Now, that can be a digestive issue. Hydrochloric acid is a common thing, but it also can mean that you're thiamine deficient and you got blood sugar issues. Okay, you might be on the hypoglycemic side. You get tired after eating, and you're not getting enough thiamine. You're not making enough. You're getting too much pyruvate, and you get sleepy when you eat. Okay, so you take that piece of information, and then if the patient tells you some other B vitamin things, I mean, MSG bothers them, which is a B6 thing, and you
Wow.
start putting these things together, and you go, yeah, you need B vitamin. You look at the diet, and they're full of refined carbohydrates. Giving them a B complex is not a bad idea. And throw in a little magnesium while I'm at it. My practice, I've been all cash since the 1980s,
Smart.
and what I found, a couple of things is you have to show them something quick. So I did 8K and I give a pretty good adjustment, and the other thing is a lot of people they can't afford tests.
Mm.
So I'm muscle testing, and I got into talking to detailed history. You take that person who gets tired after eating, they wake up in the middle of the night. That's slam dunk for thiamine. you know, it's also an adrenal issue, but you know, they need B vitamins. They don't
Wow.
remember their dreams. That's a B6, B1. So
That's so cool.
yeah, you know,
That's really great.
so I put together. I actually wrote one. I sold it to the Nutritional Therapy Association. It had 256 questions on it, and it would sort it out. It would sort it out. Like in a computer. I still got a disk of it somewhere. They're using it. They actually rewrote it so they could. They didn't like mine would give reports, like if you scored high in this area, you got adrenal, and it would tell you what to do. They wanted something like, oh, you scored here, take this. They wanted more like that. And
Mm.
but anyway,
Mm.
I got it down to like 40 questions for symptomquiz.com. It
Wow.
took because there's a lot of odd stuff for hypothalamus, and just everything I'd ever heard of, I threw in that questionnaire,
And we could
and
get that on your website.
the
Is
old
that?
the old
Yeah.
one, no.
Oh, no, no. I mean,
That's NTA, Nutritional Therapy Association. They bought it from me and they rewrote it. Okay,
wow.
and they've got it. Like I say, I've got a disc somewhere. We called it Green Crow because the guy I made it with, his name was Kevin Green, and Varnas means crow in Lithuanian, and and
Right.
so he did. But that was back in the '90s. I didn't know anything. So
Well, that's really. I'll tell you that makes a lot of sense and is something very viable. I am absolutely certain that our viewers are going to want to access that questionnaire or find you on the
if they go, the
website. I
better
think it's
ones at
great.
drvarnas.com/symptom quiz.
Yeah, that's
Or if
beautiful.
you go to drvarnas.com in the upper right corner, it'll say symptom quiz. You click on that. And I put it together. I try to be entrepreneurial with this. I'm trying to get doctors. We actually made it so any doctor can put it on his website. And I've written a book of 100 some pages that explains all the questions, tells you what to, it's divided into 9 categories. Basically tried to make it idiot proof nutrition for doctors can do that, because that's always been a thing. If more people did holistic health, I mean, we could kick the rotted log that is traditional medicine and get them out of the chronic disease business, and people wouldn't be so sick, And whenever I talk to doctors, they're intimidated by this information, and it really isn't that hard. I mean, if every chiropractor out there just started screening for insulin insensitivity, okay, that's 100 million people in the United States. 80% of the people who are not diabetic have insulin insensitivity don't know they have it. 25% of the type 2 diabetics don't know they have it. And look at what you're getting. You're fixing with it. You're fixing headaches, fatigue. You're fixing ovarian cysts, fibroids, digestive problems, reflux. There's this whole list. If you did nothing but screen your people for insulin insensitivity, okay, and it's an A1C test. You get up about 5.5. Your insulin insensitivity get plus past 6.1. I forget the numbers. It's type 2 diabetes, and the treatment's like it's a turnkey, easy treatment. You give them berberine, 500 milligrams, 3 times a day. You give them. Most companies have some sort of glucose multiple. Biotics makes glucobalance. Zorix has something called CGF. You give them something like that. You give them as much magnesium as you can get in them, okay? Because interesting thing, if you're making too much insulin, you're not absorbing magnesium. And it's for sure a magnesium deficiency. Plus, there's adrenal issues. If you've got adrenal issues, you've got magnesium deficiency. It's a very common deficiency. And so you want to take magnesium to bowel tolerance. You take it last thing at night, and you add little at a time until you get soft stools, and then that's how much magnesium you can handle. You give them that. If they got any kind of numbness or anything, you give them lipoic acid. If they got high triglycerides, you give them lipoic acid. What else? Fish oil, I go back and forth with fish oil. Fish oil, I don't like to give more than a bottle's worth because there's an area of plastic the size of Texas in the Pacific Ocean, and we don't, 77% of all Americans have actual plastic in their bloodstreams, and I don't know that people selling fish oil are testing for plastic. I mean, the good ones will check for mercury, which the oceans are also full of. And I'll tend to switch over to a flax oil. No one likes flax oil because fish oil goes to PG3 quicker. It's a more active form and all that. And when you look at all this research, anti-inflammatory, cardiac, all these benefits, but they're all short term. It's all 6 months, a year. That sort of thing. And actually, our cells like to have 2 parts omega-6 to 1 part omega-3. So, flax oil is looking better that way. And maybe actual flax seeds with the lignans, for that. So, anyway. And basically,
Wow.
if every chiropractor or every MD who still wants to be independent and not work for a corporate entity did simply that, you've got a viable. And I wrote a book. I'll give it to you. Free, use it, take it. It mentions Zorix products because I like them. They're nice people. It's all you got to do is just become an expert in insulin insensitivity, and you've got a viable functional medicine practice, and then you can start learning from there. Anybody that does functional medicine will tell you 10% of what they know fixes 90% of the patients. But when you go to the seminar, the guy's going to give you that 2% that, oh man, I didn't know what to do, and so you go, oh, I'll never learn this stuff.
So, could you just for a moment tell, keto is another diet that people are crazy about, and paleo, and what's the difference between the two? And
well, keto, I mean, you want to go into, you got to realize you get a nation that eats 200 pounds of sugar, and 50% of their diet is refined carbohydrates. You put them on a ketogenic diet, they're going to think they died and went to heaven. Might be a little hard on the kidneys, but gee, I'm feeling better. I'm not falling asleep in the afternoon.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, balance is about all things, and starting, if you start you can take our insulin insensitive person, put them on a keto diet, they're going to do wonderfully. I don't know if you want to live like that for the rest of your life, but and they do, it's good with people with seizures, if you're healing from a burn, if there's things that are that it's good for. I like the idea of I like the polyphenols, like brightly colored produce, and you're getting your antioxidants, you get a lot of benefits that way. But then you got the plant paradox, saying, oh, we got lectins and we're clumping your cells with, although if you cook the crap out of it, then you don't have so much of a problem. But see, but one of the reasons I'm not selling my book is it's not for everybody, and it's short, I mean, I'd have to sell it for a nickel or something. Uh, uh,
But it's valuable, valuable information.
but it isn't for everybody, but it's something I start with, and then I can say to them, you know, you don't seem to agree. I got rheumatoid arthritis, and you probably shouldn't have nightshades. And now you do KKL, muscle testing, and nightshades. I got to take nightshades away, or you're allergic to eggs, or, I mean, you got to fine tune it from there. Um, but 90% of the time, even if they're getting some of the foods that they shouldn't have, they do so much better on that diet. Like I said, I've had people not come in the office because they did the diet and cleared them up, and that was
Yeah.
fine with me, you know. Um,
Gluten and dairy. How do you feel about that?
well, on the initial diet, I take it away, and a lot. The problem with gluten. Um, Sometimes it's not gluten. We don't eat the same grain that humanity grew up with. We're
Love
eating a
that.
hybrid
So
form,
great.
and there's a protein in there called gliadin, which you can
Yeah.
test for. And there's a lot of people that aren't celiac disease, but they do so much better if they don't have gluten or because they're getting gliadin.
Yeah.
And they got all kind of allergies and problems. And most people do better if they just stay away from wheat. But
Yeah.
interestingly enough, I'll have people go to Europe, say, oh, I can't eat wheat here. I can't eat wheat here. I'll go to
Love
Europe and
wheat.
oh man, I ate bread and everything. I lost 15 pounds. You know? You know?
And the,
So,
and the dairy issue that's going on these days.
well, once again, dairy, they're high up the food chain. There's a lot of chemical issues, but I won't always tell everyone to stay off of dairy, but I'll take it away initially,
Mm,
in
mm,
that roadmap to hepatitis, because first of all, it's got lactose, which is a disaccharide, and I want to follow Elaine Gottschall's, you know, no,
mm,
you know, to get them started, because if they got reflux or they got digestive problems, I'm taking care of that right away.
mm.
And then I'll have them introduce dairy. And let me tell you, if dairy's a problem, it'll kick their ass when they start eating it. So and I try to get people to know what they should or should not eat, for themselves, because there is no one diet that's good for everybody. The closest I came is what I got in the roadmap to health, and that isn't even perfect. But if you got a practitioner working with you, you
Mhm,
can you can fine tune it and make it work. And then when you've done the initial 30 days, you start reintroducing things.
mhm.
And if the food is a problem, you'll know it right away.
Dr. Varnas, let me ask you about leaky gut. Can you describe, for the layperson, what leaky gut actually is and how it happens?
Um, well, I mean, your gut's got 75% of your immune system. I mean, it's like the border patrol,
Mm,
and leaky gut is when say, hey, take those razor covered buoys out of the river.
great,
So,
great analogy. I love it.
but basically, you got the small intestine, which is, you got projectiles on it called villi, and then you got microvilli on the villi. And I think if you took the small intestine, it's about 20 feet long and about an inch in diameter. But if you flattened it all out, flattened all the villi, you'd have the area of about two tennis courts.
Wow.
Okay. And these cells, so what it is putting a lot of cells in close conjunction with what's coming through there, and the cells decide, okay, you get in, you don't, and the cells are joined together like that, but you start getting the wrong kind of bacteria, chemical exposure, stuff, they start to separate a little bit and stuff sneaks in. You get peptides and, like you're supposed to get an amino acid, instead you get a peptide, which is 3 or 4 of the train cars put together. And then your immune system reacts to that. And then all of a sudden, oh God, I can't, I can't eat strawberries because, you start having problems with allergies. It gets bad enough, you get into autoimmune. I know, like rheumatoid arthritis, they tend, it's not everybody, but they tend to have a high Pseudomonas level, and the proteins, and there's certain tissue type, and there's a protein sequence on Pseudomonas that's similar to the protein type in on the joint, so then they start attacking their own joints, and you get into autoimmune and, that sort of thing. Um, and like you go in your PubMed and you start looking at it, and you got to realize, the guys that were trying to suppress it, Ignaz Semmelweis, are still there, so they'll tell you, oh, there's nothing to that, and yeah, there is something to that, and you like to do some kind of gut, you can do a zonulin test, test zonulin. If you get high zonulin, it means that stuff's getting in that doesn't belong. And you can take things like, colostrum. There's different, every company's got their leaky gut stuff,
Yeah.
Microbiome Labs, I think, has a good one called Mega Mucosa. Which is good. But you do a zonulin test, take that stuff, and change the population of what's growing down there. People like to take probiotics, but you got to think about what you're doing. If you don't change the environment, it's a lot like taking tigers and dropping them off in Antarctica. They'll forage around for a while, but they're going to drop dead.
You have the best. You have the best metaphors. I mean, you have a whole ton of them. It's actually a great learning tool or teaching tool. Now, and I appreciate the leaky gut explanation, and I want to go back to your alkaline diet because I'm a big fan of that. I think that really made a difference for me at certain times in my life. But is it
the alkaline diet works? I'm not knocking it. What I'm knocking is the explanation for it. If your pH changes by very much, you die. And that's got its roots into the into the 20s and 30s, and you talk about acid and alkaline and different diseases where acid, that sort of thing. And I used to tell people, look up the alkaline diet and follow it. Way back in 100 years ago. But then they look at it and they'd think I was crazy because they'd read what people wrote about the alkaline diet, because the explanation, the best possible explanation for the alkaline diet is you can say that, if I want to go alkaline, I'm not changing my pH, but I'm burning through magnesium, calcium, and phosphorus, trying to keep my pH balanced. I'm wasting all this energy to keep my pH balanced, and so I'm going into a nutrient deficit because my foods are too acid, and that's okay. But I like talking about polyphenols more. So I got research that shows me polyphenols.
Would you use a urine stick to monitor your pH to keep it at?
I never do. No. I mean, I grew up with that. I grew up. My family physician was a chiropractor. My parents didn't have me vaccinated, and he did stuff with the pH and all that. And I have done it, but I don't, because there's too many things affect pH. It's like thyroid. Okay. You read Broda Barnes, and if you got an axillary temperature below 96.2, I forget what it is, and all that, like, oh, it's hypothyroidism, and you read his book, and it's like all like that. But so many things affect temperature. You can't really say that. It's one tool. Even the blood tests for thyroid are not. British Medical Journal published something saying, we might be diagnosing thyroid wrong. and TSH is useless, so
interesting. Is it safe to say that keeping a more alkaline diet, and I'm basing my opinion on the byproduct of muscular contraction. We've always been told lactic acid. There's obviously other byproducts, but would that neutralize the acids or the byproducts? When having an alkaline diet would reduce that potential for soreness, in the way of lactic acid. Is that a
I
way
can
to?
imagine so. My brain don't go there.
Yeah.
It's something I don't. I don't think about it, but lactate and pyruvate, once again, you're talking B vitamins, um, but it makes sense. All I can tell you is everyone I've ever known that came to me and said, "Oh, I'm following an alkaline diet," they were doing really well.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have. Yeah.
And I don't knock it. I just say I wonder if the explanation is really what it, like
Yeah.
why it works. Okay, I don't know that. I haven't seen research on that. But I would have no qualms about saying, hey, look up the alkaline ash diet and follow it, and you'll be great. I have no problem with that. Mechanistically, I can't tell you anything about the alkaline ash
All
diet.
right. All right.
Okay.
Fair enough. Let's move on to heavy metals, if you
Okay.
don't mind jumping
I
on
like
that.
Van Halen pretty well.
Very good. That was,
In ACDC, everybody should have one ACDC song on their iPod. If you have more than that, it's redundant. It's like listening to bluegrass. Every song's the same, or reggae.
now that was good, and I happen to have both bands on my iPod or
Okay.
my iPhone. Excuse me.
Yeah. It used to be
But
hip. Now it's old white guy music.
yeah, that's right. Aerosmith, all the rest of the gang.
Uh,
So your thoughts about heavy metals?
yeah, they're a problem. I mean, a lot of times I remember back when I was very active in practice, there had a lot of rehabbing going on, taking old buildings and people would get lead and you'd have to chelate that out and and I didn't do too much of the chelation challenge stuff. Once again, I'm all cash and people, that's $300 for a 24-hour urine sample and all that. I used hair a lot just to kind of screen, and if I suspected it, I'd go ahead and do like a light chelation kind of a routine. Mercury had a lot. I mean, the dentists were going crazy with mercury. They're not so much anymore.
Mm.
And then candida, the whole candida mercury connection. Like if you got a lot of mercury, you have a tendency to have candida. And yeah, it's a problem. I mean, it should be screened for more. Um, like I say, I don't see that many people anymore, so I'm not doing much with heavy metals either. I sold my practice in 2003, so.
Very good, very good. So I want to ask you about you had mentioned about plastics, and I was fascinated by your statistic on how much plastic is in the system. How do we get rid of it?
I don't know. I mean, there's the CDC's found like 100, the average American has 114 chemicals in their body that just kind of hanging out there. Uh, you, you know, and that's only out of those they test for. And I forget how many hundreds of thousands of pounds and how many different varieties of chemical, I mean, we're living in a chemical soup. This transgender thing. Everybody's going, transgender, all these things mimic hormones, and all of a sudden we got this explosion in transgender, stuff. And I'm sure there's an environmental connection, at least in some of it. It's not all of them are coming out of the closet all of a sudden. I think there's an actual increase in what's going on, and a lot of these, a lot of the xenobiotics mimic estrogen. And so aromatase inhibitors. Melatonin is a good aromatase inhibitor. DIM, I forget what that stands for. But it's not a good, not a bad thing. See guys with breasts and that sort of thing. And if you look at, God, I can't remember her name. She did a seminar on hormones, and she came out with I felt like the dog laying on the grate getting shocked when she's talking about how unhealthy we're getting in a hormonal sense, because of what's in the environment. She did a study. She showed a study of sperm counts from the 1970s to the present. They're steadily going down. And you see all this infertility and stuff like that. So it's what's in the environment.
Wow.
I mean, it's a problem. Fortunately, like I say, that chubby lady and her chubby kid aren't dead, so we should be doing things to do it. People that are like true warriors in this, I've been to some seminars, and I mean, now you get whole water filtration system and all that, and they're still got you can get a little OCD about it, and still die.
Right. Yeah, hormones and antibiotics. That seems to be plentiful in our foods these days. Dr. Varnas, sorry. Go ahead.
But talking to a patient, nutritional therapy, nutritional consultations like a negotiation. It's like, what are you going to do? Because if I tell them too much of what's wrong, they're the dog laying on the grate getting shot. They're just, they'll just shut down. So I usually start with what can we do that's positive, and I usually start with, well, let's get the obvious junk out of your diet. And they feel good enough. And then gradually they'll do more and more as they feel better. They'll get into it, because if you tell them all this, oh my God, and I'm not that strict. I figure, I'm 71. I probably got another decade or two tops. So, so if I want a Kit Kat,
Right. So we're going to dive into a section of our program that we really are fond of. It's the rapid fire questions. I got 5 of them for you.
Okay.
That if you can give me,
I don't know how rapid I can be.
I was going to say, we tend to want like a couple, one word, a sentence or so, but we end up getting carried away with the answer. So have at it.
All right.
Ready? Question number 1. What is your favorite cheat food?
My favorite cheat food?
Yeah.
Pizza.
Pizza, very good. When traveling, what is the best secret to keep healthy?
Let my wife handle the issues.
I understand that one. If you were going to go back in time, who would you want to meet, and what question would you ask them?
Oh God. Well, I can go with the obvious one would be Jesus, I guess. But that sounds like so cliche.
That's great. What would you ask him?
Huh?
What would you ask him? If that was the one, if that was the person you
that I can't tell you.
Right.
I would hope I would have some time to prepare something,
Right. All right. Best book.
I might go to Lincoln and tell them not to go to the theater.
Very good. Question number 4. Best book on nutrition that you've read that you feel everybody else should read.
God, there's a number of them. The one I think everyone should start with is Nutrition and Physical Degeneration by Weston Price. That gets you started with the idea of, boy, are we screwed. And but there's so many other good good books out there. But I would look at that and Pottinger's Cats as the basic get started, in understanding what's going on.
Great answer. Favorite go-to supplement that you feel everyone should start taking right now?
I don't know. There's such a thing. but I'm seeing a lot of magnesium deficiency. I got to say that, and
Why is
it
that?
also depends on their, the lifestyle, what their issues are. Like and there isn't anything. I would say I give more magnesium than anything else.
Mhm.
Um, but a lot of it depends. And I use a lot of formulas, like
Mhm.
like Biotics and Zorex, and they'll
Mhm.
put like if you have insomnia issues, they got, Zorex has a great little insomnia product that you can use, and if you pick up their thiamine levels while you're at it, then you've dealt with that. And I do it according to what's going on with the patient.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if you read Brownstein, you'd say it was iodine. Um, and
Hmm.
there's a good case for iodine because it used to be, dough conditioners, they used to be all made with iodine. You mix it up in the dough and everything blows up. You don't have to wait for the bread to rise. Now it's got bromine in it, which displaces iodine. We're getting a lot of bromine in our food, and we're getting a lot of chlorine and fluoride in our water and stuff like that. We're displacing halogens, and so when Brownstein says take a pound and a half of iodine every day, he might be right.
Wow.
So,
Fascinating. Fascinating. I got. I got. I'm curious about what you would say about chronic pain, and then the second part of that is post-COVID syndrome that people are dealing with. What are your thoughts, if you don't mind sharing some of your
well, I mean,
solutions?
chronic pain. God, I've got some newsletters on that. I can share.
Oh,
Pain meds don't. They work, but there's a law of diminishing returns, and they ultimately make things worse. And they break down cartilage and bone, and so if you're going more than a week on something like that, you're in deep doo doo. I like I, I like I like pancreatic enzymes a lot.
mm.
Uh, on
How come?
an empty stomach. And I used to use Biotics Intenzyme Forte, but it doesn't have much chymotrypsin in it, and you got to take a fistful of them. Zorex and a company called PHP makes one that's got about 25 milligrams of chymotrypsin in it, and you take two of those on an empty stomach. I'll tell you a story. Thanksgiving one year, the Monday after Thanksgiving, I was supposed to take over the office for a guy who was having neck surgery. He was at a seminar and he fell backwards and he blew a disc in his neck,
Oh,
and he couldn't work anymore. And he did AK, and it was about 20 miles away from me. And he said, "Can you run my office while I'm getting my surgery to do that?" And so I agreed to it, and I was supposed to start the Monday after Thanksgiving. And I was sitting there, and all of a sudden, I had pain. Pain I would have shot myself I I if it was going to last much longer. And went down the leg all the way into my foot, and I had a drop foot, and then I got to run this guy's office. Shit. You know, and I didn't want to let him down because he was really counting on me, and so I immediately went on an anti-inflammatory diet. Basically lots of color produce. On that, and Thanksgiving that was tough. Uh,
yeah.
and I started taking enzymes, and at the time I only knew about enzymes, so I was taking 20 at a shot. And 3 times a day, take them on an empty stomach. Lots of research. Um, I got to post some of this stuff
Who was
because
the company? I remember
enzymes from
Enzyme
Biotics, but I don't
Biotics.
use it anymore because you got to take a fistful of them. You,
Oh,
you really do. Um, so anyway, I started taking them, and by Monday I was out of pain, but I still had the drop foot.
wow.
you know, and I
Yeah.
got an adjustment, kind of a adjustment, and 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 I was able to run his office. You
Wow.
know, I had to be careful walking around because every time I picked up my foot, my, my foot would plantar flex. So
Oh,
flop, flop,
yeah.
flop all around the office.
And then you
But
trip
I,
over the
I was
cushion.
out of pain by then. Um, so yeah, I think a lot of enzymes and different company, curcumin and curcumin, from what I understand, has got to be in a form that can be absorbed. It's not
Yeah.
well absorbed. And once again, everybody's got some kind of herbal combination, NF kappa B suppressing stuff. You can take that too. But my go-to is usually the enzymes.
Post-COVID syndrome, or some people that are still
Sandwich, I'll
dealing with that.
test. I'll test to see what I'm going for. Um,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
so everybody on post-COVID should do that. I put them on a roadmap to health diet, and then see what they can. Vitamin D, antioxidants. Give them a lot of quercetin. Um, yeah, see what I can do for their gut. I'd look at the gut. Okay.
I've been sitting back and just enjoying this show because, oh my god, you're like a plethora of information that's just been fantastic. And
Yes.
so it's been nice to listen to all this stuff. With us coming to a close, you have the floor. So what message do you want to leave everybody
The
with?
message I want to leave is for any physician, chiropractor, anybody, start getting into functional medicine. It's not rocket science, and we really need it. I mean, people in our healthcare system is falling apart, and you could be the phoenix that rises from the ashes. And it's not difficult. A lot of the stuff that I've got, Whole Health Web, drvarnas.com, like I say, I plug Zorix a little bit, but I don't have to do that. Um, I've actually created marketing material to help you get that going. I will answer your questions. Get started in this. Their healthcare system's falling apart. I share office with a guy who's a musculoskeletal guy, and he struggles to get backaches in his office, and it's like, and he's got a lady with a digestive problem. He wants to send her to me. I said, no, take care of it. I'll tell you what to do. And he says, don't be intimidated. It's if you look at the Sharaskin circle, I've got that as a poster that you put on your board that explains it. You're just fixing infrastructure. Like someone said, well, what do you do for asthma? Well, I'll give them magnesium. But magnesium doesn't fix asthma. Magnesium fixes a magnesium deficiency. Okay, but if you have a magnesium deficiency and you've got asthma, your asthma is going to be worse. People, we still think medically. What do you take for this? Goodhart used to taunt the audience and say, "What do you do for tic Delarue?" Is fix what you find. And and that's what you need to do, and just start with something, because I mean, it literally is as easy. You got someone sitting on the floor banging themselves in the head with a ball peen hammer, asking if you can help them with their headaches, and all you got to do is say, stop hitting yourself with the hammer, and you're going to get a result. Okay, now it won't be perfect. You got to fine tune it, but it's not emergency medicine. You got time to learn things and pick up things, and you're not treating disease. You're fixing infrastructure. That's what you do with natural health. That's what chiropractors do. We fix infrastructure. We line things up. We help the patient get out of their own way, or their nervous system get out of its own way. And the one message is, get started, because the anybody with a chronic disease is in deep crap because of the way our medical system is. I mean, and chiropractors get part of. I had a guy, he's calling, I got bloating, I got pain, and it's a chiropractor, um, and he's having, GI tests and all this kind of stuff. Well, he's been on Prilosec, for God's sakes. Prilosec gives you SIBO. you know,
Yes.
I mean, my God. So you
That's
got to
great.
start killing what's down there, and fix it. But that information's available. I'm going to try. I've got to update my sites. I got Whole Health Web, and that I try to get the information on there. That people can use. I don't even sell to advertisers. I Zorex. So Zorex is a great company, though. The one thing I like about Zorex is you cannot find their products on Amazon.
Mm, that's
You
good.
know, and Harry Eidner, advises them. And Harry's a genius. He did the biochemical biopsy, the balancing the body chemistry through nutrition. Um, it just knows stuff. And he used to be a standard process rep back when Goodhart and Dan Duffy and those, and he had an interesting take on it. Instead of selling people, he'd say, "Yeah, you're buying a lot of this." He'd show up in the office, saying, "Why are you using it? What's it do?" And Harry will tell you a protocol, and you'll say, "Why the hell is that in there?" and he'll tell you a story. "Oh, Dr. Blum used to do this, and he fixed it." He's got stories for it. It's just amazing stuff. And now he's doing formulations for Zorex, and they're coming up with some pretty interesting products. Like their gallbladder product is, it's artichoke based. Everybody else uses beets. Beets have oxalates, and Harry knows that. So anyway, well, that's my Zorex commercial. Anyway,
Dr. Varnas, you have been spectacular. We appreciate you. You have such a vast knowledge base, and we're super informative. That we're gonna provide access to your information.
Yeah, email me anything you
website.
want. I'll give
Fantastic.
you.
Yeah.
Like if you want any of those books, I'll send them to you.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you so much again. It was a pleasure having you on the show, and we'll look to speak to you again in the future.
Okay, thank you. I enjoyed it.
You bet.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Crackin Backs podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Crackin Backs Podcast. Catch new episodes every Monday. See you next time.